Hey everyone, welcome to the Lion's Den of Leadership. This is your host, Steve Rozenberg, and my good friend, Alex Osenenko. How am I doing on that one?
5 episodes and you are almost perfect.
I am almost there. That's right. I'm getting there. Well, today we're joined with our good friend, Ray Hespen from PropertyMeld, and we have another good friend of ours, Kristen Gears with Capricorn Mortgage Investments. And she's going to just chime in kind of like the Shark Tank, just kind of sit in and chime in as needed. But we're going to kind of dig into Ray today. We're going to learn about his business. Honestly, I don't give a shit what you do about the PropertyMeld. I want to hear about the business, and I want to hear the stories of the grind and the trials and tribulations that we all deal with on a daily basis, Ray. I know you're the rock star out there. I know you're the guy. I don't want to hear that today. I want to hear the grind, man.
Oh, dude, well, my life is a grind. It's really funny that you say that because, like, in our office, we've got a mentality or kind of a mantra. Navy SEALs originated it, but it's been a big thing for us. It's the easiest day was yesterday. And we keep that going. It doesn't mean that life is going to perpetually suck. It means that, yesterday was easier than it is today, but you're better equipped, more. And it's learning to embrace that with excitement and challenge, and those victories are just so sweet. So easiest day was yesterday. It's all about grind.
The one thing I was taught from my business coach, he told me, he said, Steve, this doesn't get easier, you get better. He said, so remember that all the time, because you are going to keep getting into arenas that are bigger and bigger. And he said, if you don't step into that arena with a new mindset every time, you're going to get smashed. And he said, so you have to keep getting better every time, because it's never going to get easier. Like when you go from college to the pros, well, maybe this pro, since you can't tackle anyone, but when you go into the pros, you're in a different arena. I know, Alex.
We just lost the quarterback, bro. I mean, don't give me that, man. Garoppolo is out, I think, for the season, man. Tackle, everything goes once you're out of the box.
Yeah. Landlording is experience.
Landlording is experience, 100%. And how every experience that you come across makes you a stronger landlord.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
manager.
Yep. And business owner. Because you're running a business.
Let's set up lay of the land. Let's get lay of the land here. People may not know who you are, Ray. I mean, over here you have, two fans of your work. We've seen you sort of grow up from a tiny little, almost a company to, now, swinging for the big things. Look, I'm going to show a picture. Those of you who watch on video.
Look at that, man.
Look at that. Talking about big. Remember I said I'm going to mention something about big? Well,
life size?
Look at that. I mean, what kind of man, this is
egomaniac. What kind of a company would put a sign that big in a conference?
I've never seen anything like that at NARPM conferences. By the way, NARPM, if you're not a member, if you're listening, if you're a property manager or a vendor to or a service provider to property management companies, you better join NARPM, National Association of Residential Property Managers. Just want to give them a plug here. And this was in Florida. I just came back from a Florida conference. It was very, very good. Steve, you missed a good one.
I heard that.
But I was stunned, and I put my sales director next to it. I said, Albert, stand next to the sign. I'm going to give Ray a little bit of a...
That's great marketing, Ray. Good job on that one, man.
Sometimes you got to just gamble, and that one turned out really well. So
that's awesome. So, all right, Ray. So, tell everyone a little bit about what you do, what your business is, and then let's kind of, I want to dig into this a little bit here.
Yeah, so I recognize the point of this podcast is to talk more about leadership and stuff. So I'll keep it brief. My background personally, I'm a mining engineer by trade, which usually gives people a little bit of a cockeyed response. And got into the property management space because a co-founder recognized that getting repairs done as a renter was pretty terrible. So ultimately we investigated the process back in 2014 or 2013. I'm kind of losing track at this point. Recognized there was huge opportunity to automate the entire maintenance coordination process. So here we are today. The idea that started in 2013 to ultimately become a surprisingly viable business here in 2018.
What do you solve, and what size are you right now in terms of employees? If you want to reveal revenue, it'd be good and better. Hook, but you don't have to. Just employee size, and what are you solving?
Yeah, so we automate all the maintenance coordination. So when there's a repair needed at a property, that tends to be a very manual process for a lot of property managers. They got to receive it, troubleshoot it, dispatch it to somebody, follow up every 24 to 48 hours. Did they get it done? Ensuring that the renter's happy. Our process facilitates all that, and it even schedules it in pretty incredible times, ultimately to deliver a really less taxing process for property management firms and a significantly better experience for renters as well.
Where do you find your subs for all of that? Because they're nationwide.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we handle the coordination. We rely on that property manager and their vendor partners that they currently have. There's obviously a lot of businesses kind of popping up and getting into the space to help provide those sort of vendors. We more or less facilitate the coordination and communication.
But that's excellent. How big does somebody need to be? How many properties?
So we advise over 100 doors or more. And the reality is, economies of scale starts to hit at a certain point, running a different system. There's kind of this inflection point that ultimately, that labor intensiveness of running a separate system versus the value that you get, the inflection point seems to be about 100. We have plenty of customers that are under 100 doors, but we kind of advise them some of the hurdles that they might have that other clients might not.
So, Ray, let me ask you this. What is your current target audience, and what is the target goal?
And we talk about maybe leadership and running a business. That's probably one of the most important things to figure out, right?
Yep.
And so our current, I'll just say, our current is between 100 doors to 20,000 doors is our target audience. And even in that 20,000 and below, there's some contingencies where we want to have certain things in place to make sure that we're a right fit. But that's something as a business, we actually spend a lot of time on. I think you have to be very focused when it comes to your business and understand who you actually want, right? It's not just, who would work on the platform, but who are you going to target? What kind of messaging works for them? From everything from your onboarding and support, making sure that that's a right alignment. So we actually spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we hit and stay focused in a certain segment of the market.
So I'm gonna ask my question again because I don't think I asked it.
Okay.
What is the current number of clients, doors, if you know that number that you are facilitating, and do you have a goal of number, like actual no shit, this is how many we think are in our target client?
Yeah, so I'll kind of give it to you. I mean, essentially we're at 150,000 units right now, and we grow about 15% a month. So our target, yeah, it gets more and more challenging, that number to keep going 15% a month.
Sure.
But our goal is this last year we grew 400%, the year before 1,000%. This next year we're targeting 300%. So ultimately we have really aggressive targets for this next year, and it's really interesting to think about, right? Because you say out of all of our current customers that we'll have at the end of this year, they'll make up a quarter of what we'll have by the end of next year.
That's
yeah, so that's essentially our target, and it's a massive market, right? And it all depends on how far upstream and downstream you want to go, because that changes. But I think there's 42 million rentals right now, and only a certain percentage of them are self-managed. Kind of in the scope that we think that we can hit is somewhere around 7 to 8 million, at least in what our current target is.
That sounds about right. So the 55 million is the number I read last on the can't remember the report name. Escapes me right now, but I'll come up with it. But it's 55 million rentals, and about 35% are professionally managed. The rest are self-managed, which is very surprising. But it is what it is. And so, what are you doing to achieve that kind of growth? I mean, the product. So in other words, are you making you striving to improve the product and gain more of growth through existing customers, or this is all right now new customer acquisition gain?
So we recognize the way to stay ahead in this space is ultimately innovating the process, right? So we are very product heavy. We try and really target about 50% of our staff to be development. Now we're not near that, but that's a focus for this next year. Half of our staff growth is going to be in development. So we're going to continue to go there. Our product as it stands today is a great fit for the 100 doors to, 20,000. What's, again, I feel like I got to put the asterisks in there. But the reality is, like, the thing to get to that number, we did a lot of groundwork early on in this year. We needed to know everything from how many calls it took to get a consultation. And then once we get them to a consultation, how many of them did we get to a demo? And then how many did we get to a demo? Were we able to send a contract? How many we sent a contract to an ultimate close? So I can tell you as a business owner, I can tell you how many calls it takes to get a customer. And so, like, when you can do that and you understand that you've got these different channels you want to target, and you can really put some meat behind and say, like, this is how many people can do it, you can start replicating a process. How many support agents, how many tickets a support agent can handle, how many support tickets per unit per month. Getting really down to a very granular aspect, you can model what you're going to need to grow, and then you can run that against can we actually grow that fast in terms of staffing, training, all that sort of stuff. So it's been through a long process, but a lot of it's been fact finding to understand what ultimately those numbers are. So it becomes less about guesswork.
So I got a couple questions, Ray. I've been making some notes here. First of all, let me ask you this. To me, your product, it's a great product. And I think of your product very much like Wes with Citizen Home Solution. I think speed is the key. I think it's only a matter of time until you and Wes as well get someone out here that maybe gets eyeballs on you and says, you know what, I can do this bigger, better, faster, and I can knock Ray out of the park because I have bigger pockets. So how do you separate yourself from the competition as an owner? And how do you keep speed on your side? Because I think that's what you have at your advantage right now is speed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. It's relatively blue ocean right now. And I say that because at least for now, it seems what I would consider direct competitors in our space are not nearly in as a strong position as we are. I do believe in being pretty ruthlessly competitive. My job is to ultimately go out and make it to where these people are not cash flow positive. I mean, I have that philosophy, but in all reality, like, we recognize because of where we're at, it is about speed. You can have, and basically any scaling company, CEO or leadership will tell you, you can have the best product and still get your ass kicked.
Yes,
absolutely.
And the reality is, in combination with having a very good product, is make sure that you have a very good distribution network. And so that's the component we're really focusing on building, along with continuing to innovate the product. And I do think that product is the moat a lot of the times. Product ultimately
the actual intellectual property that.
Yeah, not just intellectual property, but how you work with others, what kind of ways you're automating even beyond outside the space. Like, the ultimate goal is, and kind of like you think about the accounting systems in the space, one of the biggest moats is really switching, right? And they know that. It's not easy to switch. So I firmly believe that you want to create a moat of value. So in reality, our metrics that we kind of gauge ourselves in our own success are really how little time can we get a user in PropertyMeld to spend inside our product. And that's the number we focus on and keep driving it down. Because the day that the day comes where we have a serious competitor in the space, and you need to sit there and create a very stark difference between the two, and you need to be able to distribute that message as well.
Let me ask you this. How many competitors do you think can coexist in this market? Because do you have any competitors right now, I guess is my first question. I mean, I only know you, but how many can coexist in your opinion?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question. It's a big market right now. If you look at all the accounting systems, I mean, there's 4 what I would consider very large accounting systems in single family property management space. And then even below that, you have a bunch of ancillary type accounting systems that are also playing. So it is an incredibly big market, and it's continuing to expand. So it all depends on how ultimately aggressive they are of how many can fit. I can tell you there can be plenty that fit, but the reality is, in my personal belief, my personal opinions, I think we're solving the problem the right way. And so I want us to be the solution. We want to be the Cadillac service for it. But I don't necessarily look at how many can exist. I want there to be one, but I recognize that's not the reality.
Well, if you have a good product, it's just like Alex, right? I mean, Alex has probably created competitors in his own market because he does such a good job at marketing. Mm-hmm. So you are going to, because of you having such a good product, I think you are going to be the reason that there are competitors. People are going to look at your product and go, man, that guy's got it good.
I can do that.
I can do that.
I can do that.
Yeah, I've got fund money or whatever it is, and I can go do it.
In the reality is, like, you go out to solve a problem. It's actually a little bit of what is it? The best form of flattery is impersonation or something. Absolutely. Like that. The reality is, like, when we came out and set out, our problem to solve was to make maintenance better for renters is what we started out. And so I actually would take it as a point of pride, looking 5-10 years down the road, if maintenance was just an expected standalone excellent experience, and we were that inflection point that basically drove that conversation. Now, don't get me wrong, I want something out of that, but at the end of the day, that's a problem you went out and solved when other people couldn't.
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you that, as a property management company, as an owner, maintenance is a big challenge. And look, you talk to Pete, and we're always trying to look at, and the challenges we have now are going to be different than we double in size. I mean, so challenges change. Now, but before we go down this path, I got another question for you on the business side.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about the sales process. Mm-hmm. What is your speed of return of the velocity of your money? Meaning, let me back up a second. Do you have sales steps in your process? Like, do you have identified sales steps in your process? And if you were to be an outsider looking at your process, where do you think you could fix those sales steps? And the reason I bring this up is from seeing online posts and those other things, mm-hmm. I see some things that maybe you guys can fix on the front end with your business that may help your sales process on the back end. So I'm curious your perception. I'll tell you mine.
So yeah, I mean, we've got a pretty damn good process once we're engaged with that person, right? And so I would say, from the point of there's some sort of communication that happens, either we got a hold of them or they reached out to us via our website. Like, we've got a pretty refined process where we're going to continue to expand effort is really in marketing. We recognize that marketing and sales are very close to the same. But I've got a mantra that everything is sales, by the way, everything. Customer support is sales, marketing is sales, sales is sales, partnerships are sales, everything is sales.
Development is sales?
You know what? Dang it, Alex. Dang it. All right. Hey, how about making sure you focus on what you can develop that you can sell?
Product management and sales. Okay, let's call it that.
There you go. And so where we really want to focus is ultimately, how do we continue to educate the entire space? How do we continue to drive the conversation that it's important to have solid maintenance mechanics? How do we drive the conversation that saying that your resident experience is actually important? So those things that are kind of pre our initial engagement is where we're going to continue to focus, because I think it's relatively weak at this point. Do you agree, Steve?
I don't think you're weak. I think that you have I think in the property management industry, because this is so new, I think you may have an education gap when it comes to educating people on the value of your service. And I think, and it's not just selling the frontline people. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious what your conversion rate is from first point of contact to acquisition and actually closing that client, what that conversion rate is. Because what I'd be curious as to why you're not converting the other people, because they're not seeing the value. They all have the same problem, but they're not seeing the value for some reason. And talking to people that I know, and you and I chatted this weekend and stuff, and I think one of the challenges is that people there's an education gap, I think. And there's an education gap, and maybe, I don't want to say a flawed business model on their side, but I think there's a flawed mindset of what it is you offer, that it's not one-sided, meaning it's not just to help the property management company. It's to help the tenant and it's to help the vendor. And so a lot of people think they say, well, it doesn't help me, so I can't use it. It's like, no, there's 3 legs to this stool. So
Yep.
I think for you guys, I think and I don't know what your conversion rate is, but I think if you were to have some form of educational side of the other 2 legs of that stool, meaning the tenant and the vendor, I think that your conversion rates would go up, which obviously would bring your acquisition cost down.
The education, I think, has got to happen in the space regardless, right? Whether it's we're delivering it. So one of the things that we talk about that we want to continue to get better at is we want to be the industry experts in maintenance. So if I ask any property management firm that's not a PropertyMeld client, I'll throw that caveat in there. Nearly all, we'll say 99 out of 100, I'm going to ask, what are your KPIs for a successful maintenance operation? I don't know.
By the way, that should be a title of a blog, or maybe a 1,000 or 1,500 word blog that you write. Put some thought into it. Boom. All right. Have you done that, Ray?
So we've got a backlog. We've got 7 or 8 of them written. We're doing it.
Meld University. I already got the name of it. Meld University.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, I like it.
I've got the title of like 10 blogs that you've written.
Hey, send them my way. Send them my way. I want clickbaity. I want no. But the reality is, right? You ask somebody, why is it important to deliver great maintenance service? Like, how does that actually affect your business? A lot of people don't know. 31%, and this is a Kingsley study, 31% of non-renewals are driven by maintenance. The only thing that has a higher, churn factor is rent price, which you obviously want to make intelligent decisions there. But the reality is, like, if that's how important that process is, that you're losing a renter every year when you don't need to, and you can keep them 2, 3, 4 years. You think about what that does for turn costs, because now you got to go do an inspection. Then hopefully you don't have to fight anything legally with that person's deposit. Now you got to release the property, re-show it. You got to do, the cleaning repair, obviously, the turn. You got to release it, new tenant, and so you think about all those additional costs, not to mention you got an investor that's trusting you to keep cash flow running. If you do that every year, and when it's unnecessary, it starts to really cost on the bottom line, right? There's not just fixed costs of running a maintenance operation. There's the soft costs that are going to impact you in other realms. How many more agents do you have to staff?
You also have renters that really enjoy renting with somebody who offers PropertyMeld, right? And then go, okay, what are the other, is anybody else affiliated with us?
Exactly. And one thing that we talked about, and Steve, I know that you were at the panel at IMN. One of the things that we talked about, and I think is going to be becoming an overarching theme in the next few years, is making sure that the consumer grade experience of homeowners doesn't get too far away from the consumer grade experience for a renter. Right? As a homeowner, you can hop on Angie's List and some of these other providers and have somebody to come to your property in 30 minutes. I can install smart home technology. I can have this great experience as a homeowner, and now as a renter, I've got an archaic process. My homes are often not equipped with the shiny new toys. The stuff that I could normally get done faster as a homeowner aren't happening. And so it's making sure that the consumer grade experience as a homeowner is matched by the consumer grade experience of a renter, and making sure that those are still aligned.
So do you have any testimonials from renters? Because I would say that would go a long way as well.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Let's talk about your reviews for a minute, Ray, while we're on that subject.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. So which reviews? Most of them are pretty good. Do you mean within the product, Steve, or do you mean like of our product?
I'm talking about your reputation management of your 12 reviews that you have, all 12 of them that I see online.
Oh yeah, you know what's really great? So for the last, to achieve our 400% growth, and this will be pretty mind blowing, we have done it with, other than conferences, attending NARPM conferences, which have been really great, is we've grown entirely organically. Which is word of mouth. This is a very powerful industry. When somebody recognizes a solution, somebody else does, right? So although we do want to get those numbers cranked up, the fact that we're used by every NARPM leadership member speaks way higher in volume than, say, somebody going to our Facebook page.
Right.
And we got to fight the occasional tenant that says nobody came and fixed my AC. And I'm like, hey, we're the platform. Do you email, Google, and say, hey, my grandma didn't respond to my email? Like, I'm going to give you a 1-star review.
Yeah. Well, I can, Ray, I can tell you from you hit on a couple things earlier. I wanted to touch back on. You'd mentioned earlier, about the maintenance experience. I basically. And, our perception as a property management company is that you never want the owner calling you. You want to be the one calling the owner. You want to be proactive where you are calling them, because as soon as the owner calls you, you've lost trust. And it's another thread that's stripped away of trust with the owner. And so for us using Meld, it allows us to be proactive and be in front of the curve so that we can get in front of it. Now, you and I have talked about this. I mean, it takes a lot of education. It's not a one and done education to tell your tenants, tell your owners, hey, we're using PropertyMeld. It's a great app. I think the challenge people have is we love the apps, right? We love the technology. We love the apps. The flip side to that is there's an education gap that has to happen. I keep going back to education because technology is great. And you can use these apps and you can use these programs, but your mindset has to change as well. And if your mindset is not changing with the apps, it's like, using metric with standard, right? It's not going to work. And I think the challenge a lot of these people have is they use the app, but they don't have the education and the explanation background to explain it to people so that, again, there should be, I still think there should be quarterly vendor events that you bring in vendors that PropertyMeld does the education on behalf of the company, just as even if it's a recurring video to explain to the vendors what's in it for them and why there's value to the vendors. Same thing to the tenants. All of a sudden, if they go, well, I didn't know it did this. I didn't know that was the reason behind it. I thought you guys were just trying not to answer the phone. It's like, no, this is the reason. And I think you get a lot more buy-in.
Everything is sales, Steve. So this goes back to everything is sales. So it's really funny. So we try our best to educate the renter what's in it for them, right? Why do they use our product, when a customer launches with us than what they've done in the past? Why do they use our product rather than call the office or email it in? And the reality is you got to tell them what's in it for them. Hey, now instead of just submitting it, you can submit, communicate, schedule, see exactly where it's at. All this stuff, you're going to have great transparency. It is such a powerful sell. And especially when I talk about the consumer grade experience, like everyone that uses Uber, Lyft, Domino Pizza Tracker, does not matter. Everyone's used to having that. So you're merely bringing it in. It's not that far of a leap to say, hey, we're in the space age here. It's like, no, we're in the now age, Yeah. The whole vendor thing as well. We actually changed our video right around the time you guys went live with us to really emulate what you guys were doing. We changed our 4-minute training video to 8 minutes, and we spent 4 minutes of it selling what's in it for them.
You gotta sell.
And talking about our insane scheduling times and the fact they don't have to call and they don't have to give out their cell phone number and all this stuff. But yeah, it is. But you made the point, metric and standard. I would say it's probably more closely related to these people that believe that they don't have to have an online presence to do their business versus those that do. You think about those people that are in the street, right? And they're getting gobbled up by Amazon and Sears, Sears got gobbled up by Amazon, right?
And Walmart.
Yeah, exactly. And Walmart. Yeah. And you see what's happening and there's this blame. Oh, I've not, these things people take. It's like, no, you chose not to innovate, differentiate. You chose that. Like, and this is a space, just like we had a conversation, like if PropertyMeld stopped developing, if we stopped going after market share, if we stopped doing this, somebody would come and gobble us up, right? You have to be constantly comfortable with change and pivoting and sitting there going, what's next? And because the moment you sit there and stay steady, it's a slow decline.
That's a key. I think this is right here. That's a key takeaway. This is the speed of business today. And Kristen also knows that. I have a question for you. You're in hard money lending. How does it, right? Is that correct?
No.
Well, so I wanted to see, like, you are in lending business. So maybe.
Yes, I do market for Bay Mountain Capital for hard money, but I do not do that primarily. No.
Sorry, then I misunderstood. So let's see. What do you do? And how does innovation touch you in your business?
Oh, I have to keep moving. I mean, I'm right in sync with everything that you all are saying, because if I slow down right now, I know that there's people who have been watching what I did last year and this year now and going, okay, how do I get started in that? And I get that question all the time. You know, how do I come in and do what you do? So I am, you know, right now I'm looking at one portfolio of 2.5 million and another portfolio of about 4 million in notes. And it's all for me is speed and how fast. I have to have my team in place. Everybody has to know what they're doing so that I can get all that information translated so that I can make an offer quickly on it.
What does that mean to you, Steve? What do you do right now with your business to out innovate, out sort of compete, and sort of outlive ultimately and outsell the competition?
For me, it's that 10x mindset. It's a matter of smashing anyone close by with dominance as far as videos, content, expert. Someone wants to go on stage once, I'm going to go on 10 stages. You know, someone's going to do one video, I'm going to do 40. I'm just, you know, somebody says they have 5 Google reviews, I come out with 50 Google reviews. I refuse to accept that anyone's going to come close to us. And I'm not trying to be like pompous or cocky. That's just.
Oh, you are. Yeah. You live it, you walk it.
You have to be out there.
And you've got to you have to embrace technology. And I think the biggest challenge people have is, you know, and Ray, when I was talking about technology, I actually meant the property management companies are the ones that are lacking the mindset of the metric versus standard. It's not the end tenant. It's the company that's set in their ways that they say, this is how we've always done it. Mm-hmm. I don't really want to grow. We've been dealing with this vendor all the time. These vendors don't want to change. There's only 3 vendors in my area. You know, that everybody tells you the reason they can't. Meanwhile, there's someone gearing up behind you that's just going to smash you. And I tell people all that, it's like when I'm looking at a city to go into, and if I hear someone, and Alex, you know, you can attest to this. If someone tells me we don't market at all, I'm thinking I'm going to take your business.
Yeah, we get quite a few. You know, I'm in the marketing business. We get quite a few of these people, and you know the portfolio turns over like 10-15% every year. It's not even marketing. It's not even a luxury for your business. It's a survival mechanism. It needs to be built in. It needs to be operationalized, internalized, and continuously experimented with. There's just no other. There's no other form of surviving in this industry.
Steve does an amazing job. I mean, I see you all over LinkedIn. I'm trying to have a bigger.
Steve is literally everywhere.
I'm everywhere.
Monster. Steve is everywhere I want to be. There's a slogan there.
I'm everywhere.
But no, I'm right with him. I try to get up and I'm speaking at anything. He goes, "Do you want to be on a podcast with me right now?" I'm like, "Hell yes, I want to be on a podcast. Why not?" You know, anytime somebody invites me to do anything, I'm like, "Yes, let's go do that."
But Steve's motto is to lead with education. And that is, I think that's one aspect that you'll never get wrong. Like no matter what industry you're in, no matter what you do, if you out-educate, like I left the 10 stages versus 1 stage, reviews is important, reputation is important. But, you know, we started our business with education. There was nothing available about marketing and digital marketing, social media for property managers. Nobody knew anything. It was a lot of just curiosity out there. And so once you start satisfying that curiosity a little bit, people begin to trust you over time. And so out educating people, and that's what I don't see from you guys yet, is that sort of a massive, you know, I don't see you speaking. Like I want to see you speak, because I think people are fascinated with what you do, but they're maybe a little bit afraid to make the change, and they'll need to be educated and sort of, you know, throw some data at them, right? Let them understand that, hey, here's how your customers are performing and all that.
When I stand up there and teach something, and teach something with meat, you know, and because I'll get tons of emails and go, I saw you give this presentation. It was amazing. It totally opened up my eyes to what the possibilities were by financing all of this and how to grow my business. And so if you can give people those nuggets, they want to come use your services.
So what's your excuse, Ray? You're getting one ready, I see.
No, it's not an excuse. I try my best to not be defensive. No, I know it's a place of improvement, but I think it's also important to understand why this is more critical than it ever has historically been. There was a really good conversation recently where if you were in property management, even 5 years ago, exit, right? What is your exit strategy? There were no exits. You just passed it on to the kid that you grow after you. So there's not this end game that you can ultimately build a business and go and sell, which once you start doing that, which we're seeing that now, we're seeing a roll up that's being attempted. And so that means that capital becomes more liquid, right? It means if you can start a business and sell it in 5 years, there's more money willing to go into it. So even if we've seen as an industry that it's been like, there's been a way that it's been okay. You talk about competition, Steve, you brought it up. Somebody that's saying, hey, this and this. Do you know now that there's money in this space when there wasn't as much money? You see a lot of technology companies like ours pop up. There's money in this space. And when there's money in the space, that means there's going to be more competition that are coming for it. So I think that's an important thing to just ultimately recognize is about this industry is different than even was 5 years ago. And why it's important that even if I had my mentality and my thought process 5 years ago, that probably worked for the same 5 years before that. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And so,
well, if you look at, so when I do business performance reports where we take and sort of dissect the whole business from the mathematical standpoint, right? A lot of it is competitive analysis. A lot of it is potentially, marketing related, but a lot of this is, and I basically at the end of the BPR, I built a financial model to go after, their goals. So somebody says to me, okay, I want to grow by 150 units, right? Mm-hmm. So once I pull the analysis, and we're talking like evaluating the website, evaluating the sales process, evaluating the conversion ratio, evaluating their competitive abilities, anything to do with their current market. And then at the end of the team does this, different team members do this parts of the report, and then it's on my desk. And I build that financial model. And so what I see across the board, Steve and Ray and Kristen, is the return on capital, the annualized return on capital for the average property management company is anywhere between 35 to 45%. You know what that means for the crusty industry like this? It means that it's fairly safe to assume that if I have a $10,000 and I take it out and buy myself a car or I put it in the stock market versus putting it in my own business, I'm not going to get the return that I get for just putting it in my own business. And that's, averagely run property management company. If you're running with speed and intention, in intent, those return on capital rates could be higher. And so the investors, the money out there, they see that. This is simple. To them, it's a simple numbers game. I can acquire a unit for $500. Oh, wow. That unit's going to bring me, I don't know, $4,500 lifetime value. Oh, wow. Bye. Right. And while the other small business owners are sitting on a sideline thinking, what is happening? Why is the world passing me by? That's what I see. That's what I see. It's disconnect and the disconnect between education and unit economics and understanding that it really is to your best interest to invest as much as you can in your business today, because today is a great time to do it. So you can exit, as Ray said, you can exit very, very happy and liquid and be part of something bigger even if you want, like Mind and HRG. You don't have to walk away. You can sell them, get cash in, and become a VP in a larger company.
Yeah, it's like you said, the whole ability to exit and giving those investors an opportunity to make that return on investment. Now it's going to be, who's going to go out and execute this vision, because the money's there. And if the money's there, the competition will be there.
So we're building personally, I'm positioning FourandHalf as a new sort of, our client has morphed and evolved. We used to have, 100 units plus, aggressive growing companies. Those would all work. Right now, I'm focusing my services on scalable property management companies. Mm-hmm. I'm not ready to sort of say it in all our marketing yet. We say it some here, we say it there. But scalable property management companies, meaning that they already have operations in place, ready to accept the growth. They have the sales process and marketing in place. They just need help and boost from somebody who's done it for many years and knows exactly how to invest every dollar to maximize the return. That's what I'm building my company around, that echelon of property managers. And I think our retention is going to be much better. And I think, once these guys are ready to exit, then we may lose them. But I'll get 3, 4, 5 year customer lifetime value out of that. So that's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, I definitely, I agree with both of what you guys say. I think that, the space, it's starting to get eyes on it. I know for a fact, I mean, there's money pouring in. I think I've shared with you, Alex, Ray, I don't think I've shared with you, but, our goal is we are starting to actively go out and look for money to start making some roll-ups. And, Alex and I are making a trip in a couple weeks to talk to some people. I've got some other meetings set up. So we are actively starting that track because I think that we have a product, a competitive advantage, the way that we run our model. I think to be able to start making some roll-ups. And what's interesting is this, and this will blow your mind, Alex. I don't know if I told you this, but we're actually dealing with some people in Malaysia about property management, that they like our system, and we're talking about doing something. So it's not just a U.S. model. I mean, obviously, we know, I do a lot of stuff in Australia with those guys and stuff, but we're now looking at some Malaysian operations of growing out there. Again, what's interesting, it blows your mind, right? All of a sudden, you start thinking a lot bigger. You start thinking, instead of, nationally, you start thinking globally. And now your mind really starts opening up to the amount of money and the eyes, because think about it. Everybody has the same problems, right? People have a house, they want to rent it. There's someone else to manage it. Someone needs maintenance on it. You know what I mean? It's all that they need to market their company. I mean, it's the same thing, copy, paste, repeat, maybe in another language, but it's the same fundamental problem. So yes, it is. Here's what I find. This is my opinion, and you guys can tell me I'm wrong. Hopefully you will know. When it comes to technology, we were talking about the apps earlier, right? Where I was kind of going with that is the mindset of the business owner. They need to understand that they need to continue to grow in that mind frame of scalability, even with their staffing, meaning outsourcing. We know Todd Green does a lot of that, right? We do a lot of stuff in Mexico. If you think that you are going to grow your company and not scale it and outsource it, you will go out of business. That is the new environment that we are living in. And I think that if you're using an app to save time and to save expenses, you have to keep the same mindset of using staffing the same way. Because if you don't, you have you're a metric versus standard. Because if you're saying, well, I'm going to use staff here at a higher cost revenue and my employee expenses are going to be X, and let's say we come in and our expenses are here, we can put you out of business basically, because we can operate at a lower operating cost.
Well, and you're able to put that money towards distribution, right?
Right.
So, the other thing I'll even say about it in general, why that needs to continue to be a thought process. I mean, we're seeing it, right? Cozy's been around forever. Landlord do-it-yourself tools. Now, some people believe that they are a gateway drug to getting a professional property manager. But Zillow is releasing, the ability to do this. You have some serious money because off those stats that you had mentioned earlier, Alex, 50 some odd million, and only a certain percentage of them are professionally managed. How do you make sure that your economies of scale and service quality and value can ultimately beat the landlord services? Because if they can't get anything more, any extra of you, then you are no value to them. So you have to figure out how you can continue to add value. Like you had mentioned, Steve, lowering your costs or finding ways to inject more value into a relationship because of your strategic advantages. If there is this standalone, there's going to be less of a compelling argument to switch from do-it-yourself landlord and their improved tools to a professional property management firm. And so that's the other danger, making sure that they continues to innovate so that way the property management space doesn't become the Sears Roebuck that Amazon destroyed, right?
Yep. Alex, what are your thoughts on Zillow coming into the market?
So that's interesting. So let's take a look at this. So by the way, the report I cited earlier in the show is called Iceberg. I don't know why it's called iceberg, like, iceberg in the sea, and like Titanic kind of iceberg. And it showed 55, and it's pretty well done report. There's a lot of big industry players like Renters Warehouse supported this study. So I believe the numbers, and I've seen comparable reports across my 10-year, almost a decade experience in this industry. And so I believe the numbers. My prediction, though, what I see is 7 to 8 million rentals going into professional hands over the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, okay? Meaning that the portion of self-managed units will begin to shrink for the couple of simple reasons. One is baby boomers are getting older. It's most properties are owned by these guys. They don't necessarily want to continue to do toilets and turnover, right? So cozy is cozy, but you know what? When you have to deal with a difficult tenant, Steve is better. I mean, than cozy, right? Cozy is just a getaway drug, as you said.
Right.
And second thing, why do, Steve, you might know this, why do Australian within Australia, professional property management is more than 80% of all properties versus 25% of all properties? Why is that, Steve?
That's easy. It's from what I'm told and what I see down there, it's the laws and regulations.
Correct.
That basically, there's so many laws and tribunals that protect tenants and the owners and things you can't do. It's almost not even realistic to self-manage property.
Exactly. And so you look at San Francisco as a slice of the market where there's rent control and pretty pretty difficult to navigate tenant landlord law. And there's a lot of lawyers, first of all, feeding off of that frenzy over there. But there's also a lot of property managers doing really, really well. Look at Stephanie Gordon. Took a retirement because she could. She didn't want to. She didn't have to, but she could. They're doing really well. And so the more regulations come into the industry, the older our baby boomers get, the more properties will flow. That's, to me, is like it's a almost definitive vision. Like I see that with clear eyes. I don't have a problem with making that position known. So 7 to 8 million rentals will flow into the professional hands, but it still leaves over 30 million self-managed. This is where Zillow comes in. Their growth in real estate is sort of, I think they're going to grow steadily, but they're not going to show Ray's 300% anymore, right? They can't do that kind of growth anymore because they've sort of like already have the market. Now, where do they go? Rentals, right? Rentals is and self-manager is still a larger market than, we're too small for these guys. And luckily we are, right? Luckily we are. We're staying too small for these guys, for the Zillows.
And I think that it's the same mindset to me when I hear property managers say, oh, they can't do this, they can't do that. That's like saying McDonald's is coming in next door to me, but I make a better burger, so I'm going to put them out of business. They can't. Yeah. My burgers are healthier. It doesn't matter. And you're looking at it a lot. I think a lot of these property managers, they're looking at it from an operator's perspective, not a business owner's perspective. And the reality is that you put enough money next to it, you know what? They could wipe out the small mom and pop property management industry, even though they're not doing a better job, but because they do. Look, some people say, I don't like Amazon because it's not as personable. It's not this. It doesn't matter about that. It's a convenience. And that's why they could wipe out these, yes, it's not the same as going in and having coffee with your property manager like the old days, but the reality is people don't want that. They want their problems solved. And this is a big part of how we do outsourcing and why we outsource is, a lot of property managers, property management companies, they have the mindset to say, you know what, well, people like to talk to me. They don't want to talk to a maintenance department or this department. I'm like, that's where you're wrong. They want the problem fixed. They don't care who they're talking to. They want it fixed. They want it done. They don't care that they're talking to you because you've known them for 10 years. That's not their problem. Their problem is I have 3 seconds and I need you to answer my question, do it via text, do it via app, and get it done. Speed is a key.
So one thing I wanted to go back to, because you're right, Steve, by the way, there's a direct correlation to the speed of the repair and satisfaction of the renter, 100%. It's absolute.
Proven.
But to something that Alex said, so one thing that I've got to believe is control what you can control, right? There's kind of anticipations. Do we anticipate legislation? Do we anticipate this sort of stuff? The one thing that I continue to anticipate is software development in general is getting commoditized. And what I mean by that is essentially new programming languages are being developed that ultimately make it faster to develop. And then Steve, you talk about outsourcing. So one thing that we need to consider in that equation, and I hope you're right about the 6 to 7 million, that's my customer base. I want that to keep growing. But, one thing that we need to be concerned about is all the little continued services that will be popping up to landlords. The commoditized service. I know that when I lived in Baltimore, there was a guy that I touched base with that handled all the evictions, and it was all based in software and boom, boom, boom. And so there's going to be this continuing battle, I feel like, that property managers should not put their guard down in the hopes and expectations that legislation should come in. The moat should be value.
Yeah.
That's where the moat should be. And you know, if you're correct in the legislation and stuff increasing, I do believe that will be a big driver. But is that going to happen? I don't know. When it happens.
Well, so we can say is it getting easier? So is the American dream to own a home with a white picket fence?
Probably not anymore.
Not anymore, right? It's to rent these cool places, go work at these cool companies, be able to be mobile, and be where opportunities are. And so who does government is going to start paying more attention to? I mean, that's sort of macro level thinking, right? Who's going to be the people who are going to vote?
Pockets.
You know, who's going to vote? There'll be those people. And that's going to be that's where I think the regulations would start. We're going to start seeing more and more of those. But you're right. Absolutely right, Ray. It should not be like sit there and I just wait for those units to come in, because they're not going to come in. So there's 32. I did a math on the presentation.
Well, touched on, which is something that I'm starting. I've got 4 units in construction right now, and I'm starting a short-term furnished, basically Airbnb business. So, and I noticed that you all haven't touched on this yet. Now, there's regulations, depending on your city, there's regulations coming down. But from the investors I know in New York City, hasn't stopped them. You know, there's always somebody's going to create a regulation, and you will find the loophole around it. So for me, I'm going strong. I'm starting in Dallas. I'm then going to move to Austin and Houston. I am putting processes in place. I'm designing an app right now for my housekeepers, for my cleaning services, because I'm not a Marriott, but I need to compete with that level of cleanliness. So and for me, I'm setting the rules in to get the results that I want. So I'm paying higher hourly fees, hourly wages to the housekeepers that I find, but then I'm also giving bonuses for perfect clean 5-star ratings.
Perfect execution. Yeah. I got you. So let me just finish this math. Sorry, Kristen. I just wanted to get this point across. If you're still listening, this is it, man. If you're thinking of 7 million units, and going back to Ray's comment, 7 million units are coming in. I think people like Ray, people like me, people like Steve will take advantage of it. But it's not going to be the even break. It's not going to be 218 units, 0.75 units per property manager, because there's 32,000 property management companies, 32,000 property management companies, 7 million units. You do the math. You're like, well, I should be growing at about 100 units a year. Like, this is good. No, that's not going to happen. The Minds, the Steve Rozenbergs, they're going to take the lion's share, right? Because they figured out the value. They figured out low operation costs. They figured out these things. The right place, right time. This is the time. The time is now. Steve, you're in a perfect spot.
And
I envy you somewhat.
Yeah, well, trust me, we're taking action. Trust me. Ray, one thing that you said that I think people need to realize is your moat, as you said so eloquently earlier, is the value and the relationship and all that. The moat of McDonald's and the moat of Zillow is ease of access. It's ease of use. That's their moat. Their moat is not quality. People are going, well, they don't do the same quality. People don't go to McDonald's for healthy food. They go there for convenience because they want to go real quick. That's why people go there. And that's their moat. And what people don't understand is that motive and that moat is a lot stronger than all of our value adds that we think that we have, that people use us because they like us, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. It goes back to the very first thing we talked about. Who's our customer, right? At the end of the day, McDonald's knows to a demographic of age, gender, race, like in every single market, who their customer is. They're running marketing on there. So if you're trying to take those customers that are their customers, you're probably going to get beat pretty hard, right? Yep. But it's know your customer. So maybe your customer is a little different. Five Guys has a different customer than McDonald's. Chick-fil-A has a different customer than McDonald's. And so ultimately it's like knowing it and getting laser focused on who is my customer, who do I want, and make sure that message is crystal clear, that ROI on your marketing money, your sales money, all that is going to the right place to ultimately make you successful. And you can be seen as a competitor of McDonald's, but ultimately if you change
I think it goes back to education and just getting in front of as many people as you can and going, this is what makes me different.
I want to see Meld University, man. Meld University. We got to see it.
Meld University, name coined by Steve Rozenberg.
MU, man. That's the MU. I'm going to MU this week.
MU.
All right, guys. This is a fun day. That's how we start the week. Ray, by the way, every week Steve and I interview top entrepreneurs. Sometimes we just interview each other. Because I like one of the episodes I wanted to know about EOS. That's where we're implementing the system, and Steve talked to my team. It was really kind of him to do that.
How'd that go over, by the way? How'd that go over after we talked?
Oh, well, man, we're it's a process. It's not something we can just slap it together and start producing scorecards. It's I got to get everybody on the same page. And Andy Moore, by the way, is the certified implementer of EOS, and I spoke to him at length in Florida, and he gave me some scary stats, which I'm not even going to talk on the air about, but basically essentially it's attrition, right? It's the leadership team and, potential attrition that can be as an outcome of implementing a system like EOS. And I don't want to lose, I think, the people I have right now in the right seat, right bus. So anyway, with that, let's finish because there's a lot of things we can talk about. And Ray, it was an absolute pleasure having you on, my man.
Thank you.
Congrats on the baby. Good luck, and punch it through, man. Punch it through.
All right, punch it through. Well, thank you guys both for having me, Kristen. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right,
thanks,
Alex,
Steve.
what are your goals for the week, Alex?
Oh, the 3. Well, my biggest one right now, is closing the month. Like, I'm actually on the phones with the sales team, following up. So last week of the month, I don't have any. I try not to have goals. I try to just hit the phones, hit the meetings, and try to close the deals. I mean, bringing bacon, man. Bringing bacon.
That's 1.
How about you?
That was only 1 goal, man. I need 2 more from you. Come on.
But it takes effort and mental capacity to do this. I'm also doing. I'm writing a lot of follow up. I'm starting doing thank you cards. I think it's nobody does it anymore, and it's the intention.
Keep going.
I like putting thoughts into it, so I got to get those out. And man, I don't have a third one ready for you, man. I just came back from a conference, so I'm still
finding another entrepreneur for your podcast.
If I can give you one piece of advice, ladies and gentlemen, this is the book.
Is that the one that Jordan got you?
Yep. 5 hours. I was on a plane for 5 hours. I opened it up. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to read it while we take off, and then I'll do something else. I couldn't put it down. 5 hours flew. I had the questions at the end of the chapters I was working through. I have pages and pages of notes. This is going to change how we do business.
Interesting.
So good. Yeah, never lose a customer again. So good if you actually use it, right, if you work through it. So I guess I'm working through that book, Steve, but I was totally unprepared for the 3. What are your 3?
All right, mine are, we're doing our quarterly offsite on Wednesday for our Q4 goals. So that's an offsite meeting we're doing with the leadership team. I got to do my 25 videos, and I'm pumping these videos out for Empire Academy.
You see, Ray?
Empire Academy.
He does that every week, man. He gets to 15, but he does it.
Trust me. He's a role model. Trust me. I'll be like Steve someday.
I see him on LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, this man is on everything.
And then I've got to identify the next 10 cities we're going to target for roll up. So I got
10 cities. Wow.
Yeah, I got to start looking at our 10 cities.
Hey,
we love growing customers like you, Steve, by the way.
10X, man. You got to hit it, brother.
All right.
Next episode, let's focus on roll-ups. I have some things to share and some questions to ask, and it'll help us think through it. Maybe we'll have a guest.
Have Mike on.
We can have Mike on. Yep, absolutely. Gentlemen, lady, thank you very much. Kindly appreciate it. Love starting the week with you. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Let's kick him. Let's just kill him dead. Okay?
There you go.
All right.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy. Bye.